I think I know just about everybody here, but for those of you that do not know me, I am Denise Barbosa Lane, Executive Director of Raising Multicultural Kids. And on behalf of the Read Aloud team, Maria Montero, Jen Tantillo, and Kathy Foster, I would like to thank you for coming out with us and being here tonight. So this One Book, One Town project really was formed out of the proclamation, the Easton Proclamation on Anti-Racism, which was signed by prominent entities in the town. And so we didn't want the proclamation to just sit as a piece of paper or on someone's desk or in a drawer. We wanted it to come alive. So we created this One Book, One Town project where we can all come together and understand that it's about the human experience. The book brings together, and we in this project are bringing together young and old, abled and differently abled, all that live, work, visit, or worship in the town of Easton. So we're really excited about this project. I want to mention that when we brought this project up, in addition to working with the school department, the town, the library, we found out that the town of Easton has a project. It's a 300-year anniversary project where they want to record the stories of the lives of the people of Easton. Yep. So we are going to be able to record you if you choose. You can be interviewed. You can think about it. Dana over here has backpacks with recording equipment. After we complete the night, you can choose if to go and see Dana and be recorded, or you can think about it and come to another one of our events. We'll be at Frothingham Hall on August 12th, and we'll be doing something similar with the readings, and we will stay late that day if you'd like to be recorded and have your story in, preserved with the town. So that's great. I just want to also mention that ECAT is here and recording. So if you would not rather be recorded, just let us know and then we'll cut you out of the film. But we felt this was so important that we wanted to be able to share it out with the rest of the Easton community through ECAT. I am going to turn it over to someone very special. But so Angela facilitates the RMK Adult Learning Club, along with Kathy Foster, Ruth Bluestone, who manages it, Stephanie Cantave, Dawn Perry, and Irene Dean. I think I got everybody. And Angela is going to be our facilitator tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over.
Because I am older and blinder than I was 5 years ago, I brought my own computer because the font was so small I could not read the font at all. So, all right. Special notes for all of you. So, hi everyone, how are you? How are you? Nice to see you. So I'm Angela Clark. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Who am I? I work from Robin Hood as the head of diversity and inclusion. I work with Ruth and all these fantastic people on supporting the Raising Multicultural Kids in Easton Book Club, which I've been helping support maybe for, I'm going to say a year, but I have really no idea. Something like that. And so let me just tell you a little bit about the book club, and then we're going to get started. So if you want to get pizza, this is the time, because you're not going to want to miss any of this. So this would be the time to go grab your pizza, and then we're going to get started. Is that fair? See? See? This is the time. All right. So the Adult Learning Book Club, which was founded by the Raising Multicultural Kids in Easton board, is an opportunity to bring together school faculty, parents, as well as local community members to read books centered around race in efforts to foster a culture of learning, education, honesty, and dialogue in a very safe environment. And so we select books that have been vetted by the organization. And so normally, I beg if we can read a lot of the books that I've already read. I also teach multicultural studies at Boston College, so there's tons of books. So normally I beg Ruth when she allows me to give suggestions. And so we're really looking to, today is an opportunity for us to, hopefully all of you have read this book, but this is an opportunity for us to hear some of the stories, really listen and absorb. And we have Chris, and my dad on the end. Lieutenant William Crowder here today as our panelist, but I am not supposed to do the introduction, so I won't. I'm only supposed to do the first intro. So I don't, but I will, ignore that. And so, really happy to be here with all of you today. I hope you all are excited and enjoy what you're about to hear. So with that said, I will turn it over to you, my dear.
Hi, I'm Kathy Foster. I'm a member of the Easton Human Rights Committee. It's great to see everybody here, and it's so nice to have this beautiful weather. Just think if it was last night or the night before. So it's very auspicious, I think. As Denise mentioned, the One Book, One Town, One Easton Project is designed to complement and support Easton's proclamation on anti-racism. Last spring, representatives of the Easton Public Schools, the Ames Free Library, Raising Multicultural Kids, and Easton's Human Rights Committee worked together to identify a book that the whole community, young and old, could read together. We were looking for a book that examines the range of human experiences and that would help us all appreciate diverse perspectives. We chose Listening is an Act of Love, a celebration of American life from the Storycorps Project, edited and with an introduction by David Isay. It's a book we've all fallen in love with. This book is a beautiful collection of 49 stories from ordinary, extraordinary people from all walks of life. Some of the stories make you laugh, some of them make you cry, but all show us that each of us has value and is worthy of love and respect. We all have stories, and we hope reading this book will inspire members of the Easton community to connect with each other and share their stories. Now Jen is going to talk a little bit about how we're going to run the evening.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Tantillo. I teach English at the high school. Tonight we'll be reading 2 or 3 stories, depending on time, from Listening is an Act of Love. The first story is an eyewitness account of the events of September 11th. The story does contain some disturbing and violent images that may be upsetting to some of the younger people in the crowd, so I just wanted to give you, a heads up about that. We are very fortunate to have 3 panelists here tonight to offer their perspectives as first responders. So I hope I get this right. Officer Chris LeCount of the Easton Police Department, Chris Mills of the Easton Fire Department, and finally, we are honored to have retired Lieutenant William Crowder of the Boston Police Department with us tonight. The second story that we'll be reading is from the Home and Family section, and if time allows, we will read a third story from the Work and Dedication section. Our volunteers will read each story, and Angela will pose some questions to our panelists and then open it up to the audience for discussion and reflection. We encourage you to share your reactions or your personal experiences as we read these inspirational accounts. Sorry, I couldn't remember who was next. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to read the introduction of Listening is an Act of Love, written by David Isay. Storycorps is built on a few basic ideas that our stories, the stories of everyday people, are as interesting and important as the celebrity stories we're bombarded with by the media every minute of the day. That if we take the time to listen, we'll find wisdom, wonder, and poetry in the lives and stories of the people all around us. That we all want to know our lives have mattered and that we won't ever be forgotten. That listening is an act of love. Participating in Storycorps is a simple process. First, you make an appointment to visit one of our recording booths. Bring anyone you choose, your grandmother, your dad, your sister, your best friend, the waitress at the local diner whose story you've always been curious about. A trained Storycorps facilitator will greet you, take you into the booth, and shut the door. Inside, the booth is completely silent. The lights are low, the room is cozy. You sit at a small table across from, let's say, your grandmother, looking into her eyes. There's a microphone in front of each of you. The facilitator sits down in front of an audio console and presses record. And you begin to ask your questions. What are the most important lessons you've learned in your life? What did your mother sing to you when you were a baby? How do you want to be remembered? At the end of 40 minutes, 2 broadcast quality CDs have been created. One goes home with you, and a second becomes part of an archive at the American Folk Life Center at the Library of Congress, so that your great-great-grandchildren will someday be able to listen to your voice. Excerpts of the interview are broadcast each Friday on NPR Morning Edition. Storycorps launched on October 23, 2003, in New York's Grand Central Terminal. The great oral historian Studs Terkel, who was 91 at the time, flew in from Chicago to cut the ribbon. Today, we shall all begin celebrating the lives of the uncelebrated, he proclaimed. We're in Grand Central Station. We know there was an architect, but who hung the iron? Who were the brick masons? Who swept the floors? These are the uncelebrated people of our country. In this booth, the non-celebrated will speak of their lives. It will be a grandmother speaking to a grandchild. It might be a kid talking to his uncle. It might be a neighbor talking to a neighbor. And suddenly, they will realize that they are the ones who have built this country. Since that day, we've added another permanent booth at Ground Zero and launched 3 mobile recording studios that travel the country year-round, gathering stories. Each session represents an act of love and respect. 40 minutes set aside to ask important questions and listen closely to the answers. The interviews honor our families, friends, and elders, the ordinary people who we find all around us in their everyday acts of kindness, courage, and humanity, embodying the true spirit of our nation. Storycorps is a project about permanence in an ever more disposable society. It reminds us of what is really important in the midst of all life's distractions. It encourages us to connect, despite endless temptations to detach and disengage. On the following pages are 49 stories, selected from the tens of thousands of interviews we've recorded to date. We consider each Storycorps session sacred, and we place great value on every story that's been recorded as part of the project. It is a joy and an honor for all of us at Storycorps to do this work, and it's a privilege to share these stories with you. I'm going to turn it over to Angela now to read the introduction of the first section.
Those who have a book and you are following along, I'm on page 203. In July 2005, we opened our New York City at the World Trade Center site. The booth is available to the general public, and it has special slots reserved for families to remember loved ones lost on September 11, 2001, as well as for rescue workers and survivors. While the vast majority of Storycorps participants come in pairs, 9/11 families frequently come alone, and the facilitators ask the questions. Soon after we opened, facilitators began referring to their work with 9/11 families as bearing witness. In September 2006, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg announced that Storycorps would become the first collection documenting the lives of those who were lost on September 11th to be placed in the World Trade Center Memorial Museum when it opened in 2010. We also announced a joint effort with the museum to record at least one story for each person who perished in the attacks. Tommy Sullivan was eating breakfast at Windows on the World Restaurant on the top of the World Trade Center Tower on the morning of September 11th, 2001. His sister Noreen and his mother, Arlene, were the first participants to record an interview in our Ground Zero booth. 1 year later, in September 2006, Noreen spoke at the announcement of our participants with the museum. My mother was bestowed the honor of being the first person interviewed at the booth, followed by my aunt, when I had the pleasure of asking the questions both times. Today, Mom is smiling and laughing more. Can I say the booth was the reason? Not entirely, but it was surely the beginning. The talks began there. The healing began there. Both interviews were finished in what feels like minutes. Once we got started, the conversation just flowed. It was an incredible experience. We talked about the things we loved most about Tommy. We laughed about the good times we had and the funny things my brother used to say and do. And we talked about what a great person he was. You must be thinking, what's so extraordinary about that? Nothing really. People do that all the time. And yes, you are correct if you're thinking that you don't need to go to the booth to do that. But we had tough conversations in there, things everyone wants to talk about but doesn't. I learned a lot about my mother and my aunt that day, and although I talked to them all the time, it wasn't like being in there. In the aftermath of September 11th, you could not walk past a person without greeting them. We didn't honk our horns impatiently at each other. We wished each other a safe trip home and a peaceful weekend. 5 years later, we are right back to where we were on September 10th, 2001. But to me, it's worse because we should know better. Somehow we lost that connection we had. I believe this booth can give it back to us. I learned a valuable lesson from my mother that day, and I will pass it along, her wisdom, to you. Tell the people you love that you love them every single day. You never know when you won't see them again. In late 2005, Storycorps spent 3 weeks in Gulfport, Mississippi, and in May 2006 spent a month in New Orleans recording interviews with survivors of Hurricane Katrina, in one of the worst catastrophes ever to strike the United States. What follows are the stories from two of the most significant moments in the 21st century American history, September 11th, 2001, and Hurricane Katrina in August 2005. Joseph Ditmar, 47, introduced by facilitator Ronnie Shankar. I'm reading that wrong. Joseph Ditmar, 47, interviewed by Ronnie Shankar, 28, recorded on August 19, 2004 in Chicago, Illinois. Joseph will be read by Andy Lamb.
This one is longer, so I will need water, and I will try not to cry while I'm reading it. So if anybody is reading along, it is at 2:16. We're going to be taking a break halfway through to do some questions, and then I'll come back. So I'm here today in Chicago to tell a story about surviving September 11, 2001. I'm in the insurance industry in New York City, and in particular the World Trade Center has always been a mecca for the insurance industry. Being in that business, it was not unusual for myself or any of us to be in New York for a meeting. I started the morning of September 11th actually in South Jersey. I got up at 3:30 in the morning to drive to Philadelphia to take a Metroliner from Philly to New York City. As we were approaching the station in Newark, New Jersey, my cell phone rang. It woke me up. It was my wife back in Chicago. I said, "I'm glad you called. You woke me up. The train is pulling into Newark, and it's a lot easier to get where I'm going from Newark." She said, "I thought you were going to New York." I said, "Yes, but I'm going to the Trade Center, so it's just a lot easier to take the path over from Newark." So I told my wife that morning, kind of by accident, I was going to the Trade Center. I got off the train in Newark and took the PATH train over to 2 World Trade Center, where we were going to meet at Aon corporate headquarters, which were on the 105th floor. Mary Wyman was the facilitator of the meeting. Mary was a broker for Aon Corporation and somebody that we had all known for quite some time, a very powerful woman. So it was really hysterical when we got to the 105th floor conference room, and there's Mary with a bottle of liquid soap dusting furniture. Way out of character for Mary. But this was something that she would not normally do. It was an important meeting for her, and she wanted the place to look good. At about 8:30, when the meeting was supposed to begin, virtually all of the 54 attendees were there. We were in an enclosed conference room with no windows to the outside world. At about 8:48, the lights flickered. That's all. No sound of any sort, no sight of anything. Just as the lights flickered, nobody thought a whole lot about it. Almost immediately, a gentleman by the name of Rick Blood walked into the room. He looked at everybody and said, "Hey, I'm a volunteer fire marshal for the 105th, 104th, and 103rd floors here in the Trade Center at Aon, and there's been an explosion in the North Tower, and we've got to evacuate." Everybody in the room looked at Rick and kind of waved their hands. A couple of people grumbled, and the attitude was generally, "Hey, we're here for a meeting, we're fine, nothing's going on, let's go." I remember thinking to myself, damn, I came all the way here for a meeting, and now we're going to evacuate. It was just a feeling of aggravation more than anything. Everybody grabbed their left or right hip so they could call and groan and moan to somebody about the fact that the meeting was potentially going to get canceled. Interesting enough, the cell phones weren't working. We didn't know why at that point. We were soon to find out, but nobody could really get out a call. When everybody was moaning and groaning, Rick said, "Hey, look, I can't leave until everyone else leaves, and I want to leave." He said it with a smile that got everyone to get up and go. They herded us down to the closest fire escape on the 105th floor of the building. Nobody knew what was going on. When we got down to the 90th floor, the door to the fire stairwell was propped open. Now, if you've ever been in a high-rise building, you know that if you look at the back of those doors, you see a sign that says something like, "Once you're in here, don't leave here. Go all the way down at the exit at the lobby level." And here was this door propped open on the 90th floor, and everybody is herding out that door. I did what everyone else did. I followed them out. I should have known better, but I kept saying to myself, hey, I don't know the building. Maybe I have to go to another fire escape somewhere and make a switch. I wasn't sure what was going on and why everyone was going out. As soon as I got to the 90th floor, it became pretty evident what people were doing. It wound up being probably the 30 or 40 worst seconds of my life, because that was the first opportunity we had to see the North Tower in an unbelievable state of tumult. The plumes of smoke, fire, 5, 6, 7 stories high, flames redder than anything you've ever seen before, and the fire just spilling out of the building. It was a beautiful, clear day, and we clearly saw through the smoke and flames the sign of a fuselage of a plane. Being such a clear day, I remember immediately thinking, God, how could this person have missed? We saw the paper and the furniture and the people falling from the building. It was an unbelievably gruesome sight. People on the 90th floor seemed to be almost mesmerized by this. People were screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." And every time we'd see somebody fall from the building, there'd be another shriek. And yet these people seemed to be just pressed to the glass to watch. I never got that close. I can't even watch a horror movie. And to see something like this, you know it wasn't a made-for-TV movie. This was real life, and it scared me. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to stay here. 2 really strong feelings took over my whole being at that time. One just made me go, I want to get the hell out of here. But the other feeling that came over me almost immediately as I'm seeing this gruesome sight through the window was the feeling that I know everybody has. It's called I want my mommy feeling. I just wanted to go home, so I didn't know. Maybe I'm a big coward, but at that point I said, I can't watch this anymore. I had to leave. I had to get out of here. As I turned to go to the back of the fire escape, one of the guys that was in the meeting said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to get the hell out of here. What are you going to do?" He said he was going to get out too, but he explained to me that before he was going to go another 90 flights downstairs, he was going to use the bathroom. This guy made a simple decision to go to the restroom, and he didn't get out that day. I got back on the fire escape. It was right at the point when the PA system started to make the infamous announcement. It said something to the effect of, the event has been contained in the North Tower. The South Tower is safe. If you work in this building, we suggest that you stay where you are. We suggest that you go back to your workstation. If you're a visitor, we suggest you stay where you are until further notice. But if you feel the need to leave, please proceed with caution. I didn't hesitate. I was leaving and I proceeded with caution. But it was absolutely astounding to see the incredible number of people in the stairwell who turned around at the 90th floor and proceeded to go back up to where they worked. I decided that I was going home. I wasn't going to stay. I had to leave. I was somewhere between the 75th and the 70th floor when the second plane plowed into our building. I've never felt anything like that before, and I hope I never do again in my life. This stairwell literally shook from side to side, what seemed like 30 and 40-degree angles. The building was rocking back and forth. The concrete was breaking, and the handrails were breaking away from the concrete. The steps were waves undulating under our feet. Unbelievable. There was this heat ball that went blowing by us faster than I can say. And you could smell the jet fuel. And it seemed like it was going on for hours, but it was probably seconds or minutes. I was able to stay on my feet while this thing rocked back and forth, and it's unbelievable how strong that building actually was to be able to take that. We didn't have a clue that our building had just been struck. About a flight and a half of steps later, I caught up with Fred and Todd, the guys I came into the meeting with that morning. And Fred was kind of picking himself up. Todd had already gotten up from falling down, and they were dusting themselves off, getting themselves together. And you know what was weird? You would think something like this had just happened, and there'd be all this screaming, panic, and pandemonium. But actually, the best way to describe it was just stunned silence. People had no clue. Once again, people were trying to use their cells, but their cells were gone. Actually, that problem was a good thing, because I think if we were able to call the people we wanted to reach, the ones we do care about the most, in my instance, my wife, it would have probably scared us more than helped us, because the people that were not in the building knew exactly what was going on. People were watching this on live television. We were in a concrete tower, and we had no clue. In our wildest dreams, we never thought that a plane had come into our building. I found out later that the heat from the friction of the plane through the building was over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So all of those people on the 78th floor, they didn't know what hit them. I guess that's a good thing, because there was no pain for them. Even after the plane hit our building, the lights were on and some type of ventilation was working, because we were getting air in that tower, and we weren't getting any smoke other than the heat ball that flew by us and a little bit of jet fuel smell. We figured out later that we started on the 105th floor, the highest occupied floor that day. So basically, there was nobody behind us. There just weren't that many people there. That was another reason why I didn't think that there was a lot of panic. Fred had ripped his pants and his suit when he had fallen down, and it was starting to get warm because we were huffing and puffing down a lot of steps. Fred had smoked in his earlier days, and it caught up with him. He had half a lung removed, so he was really struggling. He walked down 2 or 3 flights of steps and kind of wanted to quit. He'd say, "You guys go ahead." We wouldn't let him do that. We would coach and coax each other down. We saw some people that were either a little bit overweight or partially handicapped, and we were trying to encourage them. "Come on, you can do it." They were wanting to quit, and we couldn't necessarily help by carrying them. What we could do was encourage them. We couldn't run, so you kind of do this little skip thing down the stairs to try to move as quickly as you can. We'd never seen so many pairs of women's shoes in one place. It was absolutely incredible. But when you think about it, if you got heels that are 6 inches tall and you're trying to go down 78 flights of steps, you're certainly not going to be wearing those shoes. So they got zapped off to the side, and we were just kicking them out of the way. It wasn't until the 35th floor that we finally got a good sense of what was going on, and that was because our first chance we had to run into firefighters, the police, and the paramedics. It's hard to talk about because we realized after the fact that the looks on their faces, they knew exactly what was going on. They knew that they were going into basically the bowels of hell, and they knew they were not going to get out. They knew, and yet here they are, going up those steps. Unbelievable. I thank them for saving all those lives that day. I mean, 3,000 people lost their lives, but thousands and thousands of people were saved. We owe those guys. We owe them not to ever forget. I'm going to take a break now, Angela's going to ask some questions.
Nice job. Yeah, I need to write. Oh, okay. All right, to my first responders. I'm going to start in the middle with Chris L. Why not? So first, let me just say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service and all that you do to keep us safe every single day. I probably don't tell my dad that enough, but I thank you. Chris, what goes through your mind when you know you're about to put your life on the line?
Say not much. It's kind of just I don't know. You don't really think about those ones. I'd say like the easy calls, the everyday calls. You think about a little bit more because
Microphone.
oh, I have one right here, Chris. So what I was saying was the everyday calls. I feel like I think about more because you kind of know how it's going to end up. But when it's a serious call, you kind of just go blank and it's you just react. You rely on your training, instincts, and you don't really have time to process it because you're just trying to, get to the call and help whoever's in need. So for me, it's kind of just a blank mind. You're not really thinking too much, you're just reacting.
That's funny. I would normally turn to the firefighter, but I'm going to continue this conversation with Lieutenant Crowder, only because we just had this conversation this morning, and fortunately or unfortunately, his response was very similar, which I find very interesting. So, Dad, what goes through your mind when you know you're about to put your life on the line?
Well, I worked in special operations. I was a member of the SWAT team, and we get called to many different calls, many different things. The drug unit would call us, the warrant unit would call us, homicide would call us if they're looking for somebody who's trying to get into a building or anything. So when I did that for 10 years, I rode a motorcycle at the same time. I never really thought about it. I just did what needed to be done. If we had to knock a door down, that was my job, basically, to knock the door down. I'd have a big sledgehammer, and if we had to go into a place after we call them and they don't come out, I would knock the door down, and my partner would be right behind me with a shield, and we'd go in and we'd do what we have to do. But I never to this day think about why I did it or what the consequences was. I was probably pretty lucky. If I was to do it today, I'd probably think about it twice. But at that time, I just did it because I thought it needed to be done.
Mr. Mills, what goes through your mind?
I'm kind of on the same page with these two. I was thinking about what Chris was talking. Our academy, their academy, one of the core principles is stress inoculation. And we get yelled at, we get screamed at, they make us do stupid things that we don't understand why they make us do. And as you get towards the end of that, you realize that when something happens, it's instinctual as far as what needs to be done. Situations need to get mitigated. That's really the only way that I can describe on hairy situations. Chris and I see each other all the time at work, and a lot of people will drive by a bad car accident. You see firefighters and police giggling, laughing, making jokes, and something like that. And that's unfortunately our mechanisms to protect us from just getting burnt out, stressed on the job, things like that. It's not that we're cold people, not heartless people, but even Easton being an extremely busy town for police and fire, it's what you do to have to get through it. On routine calls can go south really, really quick. Especially in this day and age where a mental health call can go just terrible really, really quick, and it could be great, and the next thing you know, you're wrestling with someone, fighting with someone to get to the ground or what have you. And like I said, we can go from having conscious thoughts, trying to reason with somebody, talk somebody down, to just instinctually protecting ourselves or the guys that we work with. And again, it's just like Chris said, it's our training, it's the stress inoculation that we go through, and that's kind of what gets us through. And I don't think I'm speaking for myself that when I get to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, my main job is to go home at 8 the next morning. So that's that.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Lieutenant Crowder for the second question. What made you decide to become a police officer? There are lots of other professions out there, if you didn't know.
Well, I was working in the Department of Corrections. I was working in the prison system, Walpole, Norfolk, Concord, pre-release center, halfway houses. And my brother, I was doing that for about 2 years. And then my older brother, who's not with us, right? He's not with us now. But he told me, you should be a police officer. I asked him, I never thought about it before that. He said, why should I be a police officer? I said, you're big, you know how to talk to people, you work out all the time, you take care of business. It would be a good job, good profession for you. So I thought about it. A year or two later, I took the exam and I've been doing it ever since. It's been tough in the beginning, but the last 20, 25 years was good. I came on during the busing, so it was kind of a tough time at that time, during the busing in Boston. It was kind of a tough time. But as the years went on and I moved up the ladder, getting promoted, I enjoyed the job. I had a lot of good friends in there. It was good for me.
No regrets?
No regret. Do I miss it? I don't miss the job itself. I miss the people that I work with. I worked with a lot of great guys, and I miss them.
And Cal. Chris.
It's funny, this conversation came up a couple months ago. I was out to dinner with a couple friends, my buddy's boss, and my dad was there, and my buddy's boss was asking me, why are you a police officer? Like, why are you in sales? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I looked at my dad and go, yeah, Dad, why am I a police officer? Like, what was the obsession? Since I was little, I hate saying it's a cliche answer, but since I was little, I wanted to be a police officer. It was just a dream of mine. I think maybe I know my dad wanted to be a police officer, and it just didn't work out for him. And then I don't know. It was just I was always drawn to police shows, television like that. If you ask Chris Mills, he'll probably say I took the wrong test and I should have been a firefighter. But, I don't like sleeping, so that's why I chose to be a cop. But no, it's a cliche answer, but it's a calling. For whether you're a firefighter or a police officer, it's just a calling. I love every minute of it. It definitely it wears on you over time. I don't have the time and experience Lieutenant Crowder has, but I mean, the short 7 years I've been on, the job's changed a lot. It's different. It's more community based. It's more mental health based. But the people you work with, the friendships you make, it makes it all worth it. Easton's a good community. I tell people that all the time. It's a very good town to work in. Residents support us. The town, from the town administrator to the select board, they all support us. The schools, so it makes that a lot easier instead of being in some of the cities you may see on the news where they're not supporting the police or fire and stuff like that. Knowing your community supports you makes showing up to work every day a lot easier.
That's great.
When I graduated high school, I started going to college, and I knew I wanted to do some sort of police or fire type job, and I hadn't really nailed down which one yet. So I got my EMT, and I was working on an ambulance in Brockton at the time, as I was still going to school. And I was 18 years old. I was one of the youngest EMTs in the state, and I just kind of fell in love with it. So I decided to apply to paramedic school. I was very young to be doing it, and I got in. I went to paramedic school, and then I ended up just taking the fire exam and being in the right place at the right time when Easton transitioned from EMTs to paramedics, and was one of the first paramedics to get hired in town. And geez, that was a 97. It was a blink.
Goes by quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you. It does go by quick. It does go by quick. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to my friend Andy. And thank you. That was round one.
saw a guy that had been walking along with us. He was a maintenance guy from the building. And the whole time he had with him one of those phones that acted like a walkie-talkie. And right at the time we saw the firefighters and the police, this thing starts to belch and beep and make all kinds of electronic noises. And we hear this voice screaming through the phone. We're on 82. I can't get down. I can't get down. We don't know what we're going to do. And this guy stopped, turned around, and started to go back up the steps. He was right next to me, and I looked at him and said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I don't know, man, but I got to help my friend." If you want to know what an American hero is, that maintenance man is the true American hero. I mean, this guy was willing to throw away his life to save that of a friend. Just to be able to do that, the guts, the bravery, and the grit, and the love of another human being. It was hard to watch. I can only hope the guy got turned around by the cops and firefighters later on. Probably my favorite character was on the 15th floor, but we heard him on the 18th floor. It was a security guard, and he was singing. I mean, he was singing at the top of his lungs, and he was singing "God Bless America," which was an unusual pick of a song, or so we thought. And he's singing this as loud as he can in his off-tone way and kind of messing up the words. And in the middle of singing, he'd stop and he'd yell, "This is a day you'll never forget." And then he'd sing a little more real loud, and then he'd stop and say, "This is a day that'll go down in history, and you'll be a part of it." He just kept going on, and it was incredible. This was another guy that knew. He was sent up from probably the lobby level to get to the 15th floor to make sure that people kept moving down the stairwell. And it was kind of like the thing in the Titanic, where they put the musicians on the deck to keep the people calm. This guy was singing and making cracks and making people laugh, making people think he's crazy. And what he was really doing is keeping people calm and saving lives. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. When we got down to the lobby level, Fred went out of the doors first. He looked back at me and he said, "Don't look left and don't look right." And when someone tells you that, you look left and you look right. And I saw the carnage, the twisted steel, the concrete, the red blotches. And we knew what the red blotches were. It was an absolutely horrific sight. It was like the ravages of war. We were following in the crowd, nobody really directing us in any particular way. They were pushing stuff back from the building with little bobcat bulldozers, and it was just gruesome to see what was on the ground. The cops were yelling at us, "Don't look back, just go, run, run, run." Like Sodom and Gomorrah, somebody telling you not to look back. You look back and you see these buildings in an unbelievable state of duress. It was incredible, absolutely incredible to see these buildings so torn apart. We were about 8 blocks north of the building at a commercial laundry whose doors were open. We wanted to use their phone. They had their radio on and they had all the news stations on, and that was the first opportunity we had to hear that this was an on-purpose terrorist attack, and our jaws just dropped to the ground. I remember thinking, not here, not in the States. This could never happen. It was right at that time that the 2 sounds that haunt me every day occurred. First, the sound of the twisting steel and crumbling concrete, and the building that we were just in, the South Tower, falling to the ground. But the sound that haunts me most is the sound I hear before I go to sleep at night and when I wake up in the morning. The sounds of millions of people on the streets of New York, all screaming a blood-curdling scream at the same time. We got out of New York that day by pure luck. I got on a train that left the city to go to Philly. When we came out from under the Hudson and looked back to see what was the beautiful skyline, just a pile of smoke. It was an 80-minute trip from New York to Philly, and there was not a word in the crowded train. Not a word was spoken. It was just stunned silence. I took a rental car to my mom and dad's house, who still live in Philly. There was my mom to meet me on the steps of the house, giving me this big hug and kiss. I went into that house and watched TV to try to understand what was going on. I passed out from pure exhaustion and trauma. Got up the next morning and made the 14-hour trip to Illinois in about 11 and a half hours. I called everybody, anybody that cared to talk to me and that I thought I needed to talk to, every member of my family, even cousins, aunts, and uncles that I hadn't talked to in a long time. Word traveled fast. My mom and my wife had basically been telling everyone where I had been and what was occurred. And it was just good to talk to people because there was a feeling of security, that people cared. You find out who your friends are and who really loves you on days like that. As I got closer to Aurora, Illinois, where I lived at the time, I called my wife for about the 1,000th time and said, "Where are you?" She said, "I'm getting ready to go to church because they're having a mass. I'll just wait for you if you're getting close." I said, No, today's a good day to go to church. It's a good place to be." And I said, "I'll meet you there." I drove up to the parking lot of the church and walked in the back of the church and opened the door in the main church area. The place was just packed. These hundreds of people in the church were all staring back at me because they'd known what had occurred. I looked over to the right to the pew where we always sit, and there was my wife, and there were my kids and my family and my friends. My wife's not real non-demonstrative, real quiet, and she jumped over the back of the pew and ran to the back of the church and gave me this gigantic hug and kiss. I knew I was home. I was home. August 19th, 2004.
Thank you. Officer Mills, have you ever encountered an ordinary American hero similar to the maintenance guy or the security guard in the story? Oh, you're not Officer Mills? No. You're a firefighter?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at you.
He wants to be, though. He does.
Oh.
He feels left out. He's 2 against 1.
I think that's an easy question to answer. I think every day. I think everyone here is that person. I think it's the situation that brings that out of an ordinary person. I mean, that security guard, maybe he barely graduated high school. You know, it could have just been a job that he took because there was nothing else to take, entry level GED type job, and that situation happened, and it dragged the good out of him. I really believe that with everything. We pull up to car accidents where people pull people out of a car that's on fire, and where a lot of people would have just kept driving or whatever. And I think there's a little bit of that in everyone here, and that's so I say I encounter it all the time, and I'm no different.
Yeah, kind of cliche answer, but everyone I work with, anyone involved in the profession, whether it's the fire side, the police side, but it doesn't have to be someone who signed up and they know they signed up for that and that's what their job entails. I mean, I can think of an incident in town. I was a month on the job, I had a triple fatal car accident, and one of the best responders or heroes, whatever you want to call them, that day was an off-duty nurse. Just stopped and it was giving CPR to a girl in the back seat. And for me, a month on the job, it's like, yep, you keep doing what you're doing. You're way more trained than I am. I mean, I think, like Chris said, when horrible things happen, the good comes out in everyone. And it's unfortunate that it takes something horrible to happen for the good and the better of everyone to come out. But you just see it. People want to help people, and no one wants to see someone in need. So, again, kind of like Chris said, everyone out there has it in them.
As I was growing up, I was in the Boy Scouts, and my leader, my Boy Scout leader, his name was Bertram Allen. He was really instrumental in helping me to grow up to become the person that I am today. Anything I needed, he was there for me. I was really poor back then. This is going back into the '60s. I didn't have much. I used to shine shoes and sell newspapers. And my parents couldn't afford to get me anything, so I would get it myself at a very young age. I was working in the grocery store at 10 years old, and running the cash register, bagging groceries, and so to this day, I'm good at counting money. But as Bertram, as I was saying about Bertram Allen was his name, he helped me in the Boy Scouts. I wanted to go to camp. I really couldn't afford to go to camp. He helped me to get there. He was just anything I needed. If I had any questions, anything that bothered me at all, I could always go to him. So I wish he was around today. He was a hell of a guy, a wonderful person. He really helped me in growing up, become the person I am today.
Thank you. One more question. And I'm going to bring it back to you, Lieutenant Crowder. What do you wish that more people understood about the work you do every day? I think there are a lot of us, right? We talk about firefighters, we talk about police officers, and given the state of the state, especially racial tensions, race riots, etc., going on in this country, I think we all have a different perspective on how we view police officers, depending on who you are, where you live, and what you look like. And so, starting with you, Lieutenant Crowder, what do you wish that more people understood about the work that you do every day?
Well, I enjoyed the job. In the beginning, it was a little tough. Like I said, I came on in 1975 during the busing, so it was a tough time for me at that time. You know, I've never been called so many names and rocks thrown at me and things going on at that time. And when I first came on the job, I'm saying to myself, is this what this job is all about? Am I going to have to deal with this? But as time went on, and I had problems with the people on the job as well. So when I came on, it was there wasn't that many black officers on the job. You know, under Judge Wojcinski, they took it to court. The police department the minority community took it to court, and under Judge Wojcinski, it was proven that they were hiring one black to every 100 whites. So that changed, and I was the second class after that happened. So it was kind of tough for me, even with the people that I worked with for a while, until we proved ourselves as time went on, helping out and doing all the jobs and doing all the things that we had to do at that time. But as years went by, it got better and better. I moved up the ladder. People respected me. They knew me. They said, Billy's okay. They called me Billy. Billy's okay. So I enjoyed it. I kind of miss it at the same time to this day. I met a lot of wonderful people over the years.
Thank you. Again, still in an answer from Firefighter Mills. You'll see us laughing and joking a lot at horrific scenes, and again, it's the way. Unfortunately, it's the way we protect ourselves. It's not that we're not humane or insensitive or we don't have emotion, but it's just we see it so often, unfortunately, that you become numb to a lot of things. So when you see us, whether it's police and fire joking around or police and police joking around at a horrific scene, it's not that we don't take it serious or we don't care what's going on. It's the way we kind of protect ourselves from letting it get to you and ruining the job for you. Other thing, kind of, over the last couple of years, definitely policing's been a hot topic. There's bad apples in every profession. I'll say that. The unfortunate events should never happen. Should be held to a high standard. I'm sure Lieutenant Crowder would know back when he was in the academy. Firefighter Mills, and he was in the academy when I'm in the academy. I work at one of the academies now, and the biggest thing you teach is integrity and doing the right thing when no one's looking, and accountability. And the incidents that happened over the last couple of years should have never happened. But if you ask the people who are still doing this job, they would agree with you that it should have never happened. And I say this to everyone. And it doesn't matter what profession it is. It doesn't matter if you're a criminal. It doesn't matter if you're a police officer, firefighter. There's bad people out there everywhere. So it's don't associate one person's actions with a group, because it's just not. That's not how we are. The people that do this job are in it for the right reasons, and unfortunately, some people slip through the cracks, and they shouldn't have. But that's not the people that you see every day.
What do I wish people understood about our job? Aside from what I touched on earlier, I think that the police officers and firefighters all over, they're just regular people. They're not superheroes. They're not anybody special. Half the time I don't even tell people what I do for work when someone asks. It's a job. It is a calling. But that paramedic firefighter that's there to treat your mother's chest pain has a wife and kids and needs to get home too. That police officer who's there to separate the husband and wife that are fighting, it has a wife and kids and needs to get home to that person too. And I think the public forgets sometimes when they see, us on TV or whatever, that, we're just regular people too. A lot of us have other jobs to make ends meet, or, Chris works at the academy. It's just trying to diversify and support your family however you want to do it. So that's, at the end of the day, we're just ordinary men and women just like everyone else.
So I'm going to beg to differ just a little bit. These are, I'm going to say, extraordinary individuals, whether they admit it or not. And it's okay if you're a little bit humble. So I am the daughter of Lieutenant Crowder. And we dealt with a lot in our household as a result of, right, him being a police officer. It's stressful. I remember some of the stories that he would come home and share. I can't imagine having to deal with that every day. And one in particular stands out, and I don't know why it stands out. I remember, Dad, you telling me a story about you chasing, there was a concert, and you were chasing a boyfriend and girlfriend, young, were fighting. The guy, I'm assuming, was on drugs. You were chasing the guy to try to save him. He went up to the top of the building and jumped and died in front of you. Do you remember that? And his tongue is hanging out in the middle of the street. To me, that's horrifying. Like, this is the stuff that these people see and deal with every day. And so, Firefighter Mills, I completely hear you, and I appreciate the humbleness that you express here today. But there's a lot that you all see and go through every day, and then you still have to come home to your families. And if you're my husband, you have to deal with a nagging wife, because I don't stop. So, it's rough. And so I know we definitely, given the times, it can be difficult, right? You have people who love you, and then you have people that hate you. That's difficult. That's difficult. That's difficult to have to deal with every single day when you are putting your life on the line to save people you don't know. So I'll continue to thank the three of you. All right. We're going to turn it over and ask the audience a couple questions. So I'm going to put both questions out there so you can be thinking about question 2 as you're answering question 1, because I think that's fair. So the 2 questions that were out there, the 2 questions I'd like to ask are, what details of the escape of the person that Andy just read, right, and the survival stood out to you most? That's question 1. And question 2 is, why are the stories of survivors important to document and remember? Why are these things so important? Why is history so important, specifically around September 11th and maybe Katrina? So question 1, what details of his escape and survival stood out to you most?
What impressed me was the fact that he had such a good memory of, minute by minute, floor by floor, person by person of what he went through. And, he definitely was experiencing probably one of the most exhausting moments of his life, but he chronicled it so well and, and could write about it 4 years later. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So the part that struck me the most was when he was describing the horrific sight as he left the building. And I think for me, the reason why that struck me the most is I had a lot of friends that were in the buildings at the time. My brother was in the building across the street at the time and watched people jumping. And my friend's father died in the towers. So just hearing it, even on September 11th, I have a very difficult time watching any shows on it or anything like that, because it was so personal for so many of us. And I think that is a time, when I'm working with my own children, they were not alive at that time, and they don't understand the feelings that we had living through that time and being there. And, Boston, we were close. I mean, I was a first grade teacher at the time, and having to explain to 6-year-olds why the world was changing. It was a very difficult period for us, but that description of the horrific sight when he left was really impactful for me.
Thank you.
One of the images that really stood out to me was the trail of women's shoes that had been left. That was very vivid, and I think it resonated with me. One of my sisters was working in Manhattan that day and had to walk home to Brooklyn. and she had to take, and she's a designer, she wears very nice shoes, and she had to walk home barefoot to Brooklyn and she now keeps a pair of sneakers in her bag at all times in case she ever needs to be in that situation again. So.
I think one of the things that really struck me was the instance at which he had already decided that he was going to get out of the building. He was on his way down, and and I remember this at the time. The intercom said, "No, it's okay. You're fine. Go." And it really struck him how many people just turned around and went back up. And so it makes me think about, what is it about us as individuals that makes you maybe say, no, they're saying it's okay, but I don't think it's okay, and I'm going to go against everybody saying that. Just as like at a car accident, you say, some people drive by, somebody else says, no, I'm getting out, I'm going to help, So what is it that's different about that person that says, so that kind of struck me.
I agree with you. I was struck by the fact that he survived, that he made it. I mean, I remember that. I was with your daughter when it happened. We were getting permits to rebuild our house, and it happened, and everything stopped in my city. But the fact that he made it, that was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
He was a hero.
A couple of things stood out to me, mainly around sound. When he described the person just singing "God Bless America" off key, and I think of I've worked with people in nursing homes, and they can forget everything. But if you sing music from when they were young, they'll come to life, and you'll see a piece in their personality. So I'm thinking of like how some people use music to get through things, and also when he described the sound of the building falling. And again, that's something that's very intense that I guess some people can tend to forget, is that sound is very important, and it's something that him hearing them say, like, go down, and he chose to go back up, and he chose to keep going. It can to have something be a blessing and also something harmful. That duality is kind of crazy.
Given the time, I'm going to skip the next question and move on. But I will say, just to end this, so I lived in New York City, right? And it's so interesting. I think I moved out, my daughters too. So 2 years before, I was working on Park Ave, my first job. I was so excited, making no money, but I was so excited to be there. And I moved out 2 years before. And my mom came and brought me to New York, right? We all packed up all the stuff, and I moved out there. I was so excited to be on my own. I graduated. We were in the World Trade Center on the first floor, and of course she loves shoes, so she's buying shoes on the first floor. And that's what stood out to me. And 2 years later, I had my daughter, my oldest, Naira, and I must have said to her every single day for a year, we're so lucky. And she's 1, 2, she has no idea what I'm talking about. You're just so lucky. We're so lucky. We're so lucky. So that stood out to me, that we were there. We would have been part of all of the craziness. Okay. All right. So we're going to skip the next, and I'm going to keep us moving. This is the third story, right? Is that the third story? Second story. I am on the second story. Okay. When Storycorps launched, I wasn't sure whether the interviews would resonate with anyone other than the participants and their families. I also suspected that we'd start hearing the same stories repeated over and over again. From the day we opened, I was taken by the power and universal of the recordings coming out of the booths. Most Storycorps interviews revolved around 3 giant themes of human existence: birth, love, and death. But from these themes emerged an astonishing array of stories. One day, about a year into the project, the senior producer from Storycorps, Sarah Kramer, came up to me and said, the longer the project runs, the better the stories seem. Her words remain true to this day. All right, so introduction to story number 2. Cousins Cherry Johnson, 72, and James Ransom remember visits to their grandmother's home in I'm saying this wrong, Bradenton, Florida, recorded on January 12, 2006 in Sarasota, Florida. Sherry will be read by Ruth Bluestone, and James will be read by Stephanie.
I want to remind you about a lady named Miss Lizzie Devine. Miss Devine was a lady I thought was an aberration. She was a wiry lady. She wore summer dresses, and she had a bandana and a straw hat. And she was the only person I knew who had more power than my grandmother. Grandma Minnie was a true matriarch, but everybody was in awe of Miss Devine.
Miss Devine, when she braided your hair, your eyes went up in your head. You'd have to sleep on 2 soft pillows because she had your hair so tight. Miss Devine was a person that would put the fear of God into you. She wasn't a mean person, but she was stern. And when she said something, she meant exactly what she said.
She would come in on a Sunday morning and take us to Sunday school. And I didn't want to go to Sunday school with Miss Devine. When I saw her come down the road, Sherry, I thought that she leaves would be blowing off the trees and the sky would go black. I was afraid of her. She came in the house one morning and said, "Children, good morning, children." And everybody from my mother on down said, "Good morning, Miss Devine." And she said, "It's time to go to Sunday school this morning, children." And I said, "Miss Devine, I can't go to Sunday school today." She said, "No." I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "My mother didn't bring enough clothes for me to go to Sunday school this morning." She said, "Oh, no?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, what kind of clothes do you have?" And I said, "All I have, Miss Devine, are my pajamas and my tennis shoes." She said, "Well, that's okay, honey. Put your tennis shoes on and we'll go to Sunday school." I looked at Mother and she looked away, kind of laughing. Miss Devine made me walk 2 blocks in my pajamas and my tennis shoes. I had to sit down in church with my friends during Sunday school in my pajamas and my tennis shoes. I'll tell you, Sherry, I never lied again.
I might be Miss Devine. Oh, jeez. Okay. Officer LaCourte, we're going to start with you. And this is for the audience as well. So we would love you to participate in this as well. Have you ever had someone in your life like Miss Devine, and how did that person impact your life?
I hate to do this to her, but my mother. She's an old school Dorchester Southie Projects girl. So she's not mean. She's the sweetest lady ever. I'm sure probably Chris has met her around town. She lets everyone know who I am. Her son's a police officer in Easton. I think she thinks she's the police officer though, not me. But she's probably my best friend. She will support me when I do good. When I do something good, she lets me know. But when I don't do good, when I was growing up playing hockey in high school, if I had a bad game, God, she let me know. She's in the stands in the middle of the game telling me how bad I was and I wasn't going anywhere. Thanks for that, Mom. But yeah, I love her for it. I mean, she made me who I am. She made me tough. She made me be able to kind of handle anything. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, my mom kind of relates to her a little bit.
You can pass it to your right.
There you go.
I don't know. I guess as a role model, I'd have to say my father was pretty stern. Any move that I made, I heard about it. If the neighbor said something, he did this today and he did that, and I would hear about it. But he was fair. He was stern. He was tough. But I learned a lot from him. He was patient. He was honest. He worked hard. He didn't smile that much. He was just a tough guy. So I would have to say my father was that kind of person.
Like Chris, I'm going to have to go with Mom. The guilt. Any wrongdoing resulted in a lesson taught. Not harshness or abuse or anything, but the occasional aggravation installment plan that compounds with interest. But I learned from it. I look now, and as a parent, you tend to judge how a family is by how their kids are. Like, oh, the kids can't be that bad, the parents can't be that bad, or what have you. So I have 3 good kids, and 90% of that is my wife. But the 10% of lowballing, but the other 10% are definitely values that I've learned definitely from both of my parents. I can't believe I said that publicly.
Could be in trouble there. Well, we all knew that about Carrie.
Anyone else? I'm gonna say my mom. My mom is my BFF, but when I was growing up, like, no nonsense. There was no talking back in my house, which is what I try to explain to my kids because they don't shut up, ever. So I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what it is. And my father was that person, Firefighter Mills, in the stands, screaming when I played basketball. You're either good or you suck, depending on what day of the week it was. So I probably had a mix of both. I think I turned out okay, but the jury is still out. Anyone in the audience want to share? We'd love to hear from you.
I have to agree that, like, I mean, Dad was a little scary, but Mom had Mom held the reins, and the thing that always sticks out in my mind is we had some neighbors down the street. So we were the Jewish family on the street, and the O'Briens down the street, they didn't like us. Yeah, and one of them said something really mean and threatening, and they would stand out there spitting on the floor and like waiting for us to walk by so they could threaten to like beat us up. And I'll never forget my mother grabbing, I don't know why, she grabbed whatever she could. And I came home, I said, Mom, I'm not like, I didn't know she was going to do anything. I just was telling her, a story, what happened today. And she grabbed a baseball mitt and she ran down the street waving the baseball mitt. If you ever come near my kid again, I'm going to wallop you up the side of your head. So like, and I don't know if this is what I'm thinking, but my daughter Hannah, who's not here today, but she will always tell you that she's really proud of me, that she knows, and she knows her mom also, that we've got her back, and we've got her back the same way Mom had my back.
I'm not sure what the future holds, but right now I'm the worst mom ever on this planet. The worst mom. I shouldn't exist in this world at all. They wish I was away. So hearing all your stories, I'm not sure where this is heading, but currently I'm in a state where I am not welcome as a mom.
So I'm going to say not my mom. My mom was the sweet mom who raised 4 girls all by herself, but had a background of family. And I think me and my sisters grew up without our father, who passed away when we were really young. And she moved back here, and this is where we grew up, because her family's here. And so I'm going to attribute it to my Aunt Kay. She would watch us, and I don't think our house ever looked as clean as it ever did when Aunt Kay babysat us. She was my grandfather's sister. She even made me drink the milk from the cereal. And I thought that was the worst thing ever. But when she was around, you knew the business and you knew, but she was so loving too, like as much, and my whole family just helping us and helping my mom. And I think we wouldn't want to make my mom look bad because my mom was such a loving person. So I think I attribute it all. And the sternness is definitely my Aunt Kay.
Well, I just want to say thank you before I turn it back over to Denise. Firefighter Mills, Officer LaCourt, Lieutenant Crowder, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for all that you do to keep us safe.
And thank you, Angela, for everything you do for us. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I just want to say thank you all for coming out and spending your evening with us. We know that your time is valuable. You can probably be doing anything else right now, but this community gathering, we feel that's important as well, and glad that you made the time to come here and spend it with us, because I think some of us cried, right? We laughed, we learned a little bit more about each other, and we got a chance to hear your story and your stories. So, thank you. Am I missing anything, Maria? I look to Maria because she keeps me on track.
What is the date of the next community gathering?
Oh, okay, thanks. So the next community gathering is August 12th. It's called Listen, Lunch, and Learn, and it will take place at Frothingham Hall. Please, what I will do is I will get another Eventbrite out there so you can register. So we'll have lunch again. We'll have different conversations, different stories, and we'll get to share again. So please spread the word because we feel like this is important in bringing us all together. Oh, but before I go, one more thing. The recordings, we are planning on having the recording equipment available on August 12th at Frothingham Hall. So if you'd also like to come and tell us your story, please see Jen Tentillo. She'll take your name. She's right over here next to Andy. She will take your name and your information, and we'll make sure we're ready to interview you, or you can actually bring someone else to interview you on that date. And we have additional dates available as well. There's a calendar on the table there. Does anybody have any questions for us?
It was exceptional.
Oh, can you say that, Anika?
To be very honest, I was running around all day. I haven't eaten all day. And I was like, oh, God, Angela, I had a wonderful time. And I will be at every one of these. Yes, it's exceptional.
Oh,
really, exceptional.
Thank you.
You're an exceptional moderator, too.
It's all Angela. But, we have an exceptional volunteer network, right? We have our Read Aloud team, Maria, Kathy, and Jen that help put this together. And then we have these wonderful volunteers that really step up, right? And thank you again, gentlemen, because you really stepped up for us, too. All right. Have a good night.